everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Certrec. I'm your host, Michelle Thomas, and with me today is Certrec CEO and President, Ted Enos. If this is your first Conversations with Certrec, we welcome you to our conversation. And of course, we certainly appreciate those that are joining us again. Today, we are focusing on NERC deadlines and how our action tracking system is a key component to never missing another deadline. We're going to discuss the history of CATS and its purpose. Then we will provide a high-level demonstration of the platform. And finally, we will have a live Q&A where we will take questions from you. So please feel free to submit questions at any point and we will get to them very soon. So with that, Ted, let's have a conversation. All right. Well, so Ted, CATS has been around for a decade now at this point. So can you tell us a little bit about the history and how CATS kind of came to be?
Well, yeah, sure. Like most of our products, we were looking to solve a customer problem. In the beginning of the company, we were mostly nuclear folks, and we were very familiar with corrective action programs and tracking systems and systems that tracked our tracking systems and all of those kinds of things. As we began looking at where NERC was going in the regulatory process and the development of the internal compliance program, we really felt there was going to be a serious need for some type of action tracking to stay in compliance. So we started developing CATS really just as a little simple corrective action program and started putting that into practice. And of course, over the years, it's morphed and evolved and become all kinds of things that we never really imagined at the beginning. But we were just looking to solve that action tracking piece.
And starting 10 years ago, a little bit ahead of the game and thinking ahead of what you saw coming in the NERC industry. So what really led you to believe they were going to need the action tracking system?
Well, I think we were very frustrated in the early days because it seemed very clear to us that this was going to be a need. Mm-hmm. I mean, we just couldn't understand how one could do what needed to be done without some kind of tracking system. But the industry was a little slow in figuring that out, and we kept trying to sell them something they didn't really want.
They didn't know they needed it yet.
They didn't know they needed it yet.
Sure.
We were kind of like Jobs selling everybody an iPhone before we knew what an iPhone was.
Sure.
He had a little better success, but
maybe a little bit now that everybody has an iPhone, kind of. So in designing it, you said you wanted to make it more simplistic and make it easy to use. So based on your experience in nuclear, how were you able to do that and what makes it so easy to use?
Well, you look at the time frame, 10 years ago, and it doesn't seem all that long ago, but actually it was a long time ago in the stage of technology. And we were really still working with a lot of old systems, mainframe-based systems, clunky, dumb terminals, all that sort of stuff. And our idea at that time had been to go to software as a service. We wanted to get it easy, no software to install, windows and menus and structures that you're familiar with. We look at all of the guys out there. We look at Amazon. We look at all the different websites and their user interfaces and try to figure out what works. And so our goal then was to make it web-based, easy to use, and intuitive.
So what would you say was the overarching problem that we were trying to help our clients solve when it came to the creation of CATS?
Tracking when something is due. I mean, you've got due dates that have to be met, and that's certainly, and a lot of them are out there in time. It's not like it's next week. It's got to be done in 18 months. The other one that we saw as a stretch was recurring. Okay, I've done it now, but I have to do it again at another frequency. And so how do I automatically schedule that next thing so I don't have to go manual and edit over and over and over? So deadlines was the main thing that we were after. So
we at Certrec use CATS for our NERC compliance management group and for other processes. Did you ever dream that, it would help run our business as well?
Didn't see that when we started, although it pretty quickly became just a really good action tracking thing. And as a business, we have lots of things to track and lots of deadlines. So it kind of made sense. to incorporate it into our business. And in fact, we made a number of changes to it as we started using it, and we learned it could do things. And wouldn't it be cool if it did this? And wouldn't it be neat if it did this? And so we just keep building it and changing it as we go.
Yeah, so I don't know if you remember, CATS was one of the first projects that I worked on when I started here. It's certainly changed. I think the recurring functionality is big as to what we've added in there. So what do you think the benefits are of having a product that's customizable and changeable with the needs of the end user?
Well, one of the main problems I always felt like that we had in the old days when we were dealing with computers and software and whatever else is we would get a piece of software and we say, okay, can we make what we're doing fit that? Okay. And so we would change the way we were working because the computer wouldn't do that. And the way we've designed CATS and a number of our other products is exactly the opposite. You have a way, each company has a culture, they have a way of doing business, they have procedures, they like to do things this way. Well, we don't want them to have to change that. If it's a good process, let's keep that process. We want to make the computer just help them do that process automatically. So being that it's low code, no code, it's very easy for us to make changes to accommodate the different styles of the different customers. We think that's really important.
So I'd like to thank you, Ted, for joining us today to discuss the evolution of our CATS application. It's always interesting to get the history of how we've created a solution to try to solve a client's problem. So here at Certrec, we pride ourselves on our innovation and expertise, and now we'd like to do a little show and tell to demonstrate how we like to put our expertise to work solving your problems with CATS. So let's pounce right in. So just a quick reminder that we will be doing a live Q&A session at the end of this CATS demonstration. So please feel free to submit your questions at any point and we will be getting to them very soon. So as Ted mentioned earlier, CATS is a web-based application that you access through our Certrec portal with a unique username and password. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you don't have to install any software on your computers. There's no software for you to install on servers. It is web-based, meaning anywhere you have an internet browser and access to the internet, you can access our CATS application, which again goes right with our motto of making things pretty easy to access. So let's take a look at the platform. What you're looking at here on my screen is the home screen of the CATS application. So everything in CATS works off of two levels. You have conditions and actions. Conditions are the high-level overarching thing that you're trying to track. And of course, the actions are all of the actions that you need to satisfy to complete the condition. So the first thing that we're looking here is the conditions page. This is one of our sample pages, so it's just got some demo information in it here. But you can see as you work down the page, we have a bunch of different conditions. And then as you work to the right of the page, you have a bunch of different information regarding each condition. So each condition gets a unique ID. You provided a different category. These can be pre-audit prep. These could be different standards that you're trying to track. You get to customize the categories and how you want to organize your information. Provide each condition a title. The group could typically be your department or the different groups or organizations within your company and how you want to, organize their information. Date added, status, and then finally the ever important due date over there on the right. Now, again, as Ted mentioned earlier, a lot of things in CATS is very customizable. So moving columns around, changing what's being shown, those are all possibilities, but we're not going to look at that at this point right now. But again, you have a lot of information on each condition that's in here. And of course, as you begin to track things, that list gets very, very long. So CATS also has a very powerful filtering system built into it to allow you to really narrow down the information that you're looking at. So when your list of conditions is 100 or 200 or however many things you're currently choosing to track, you can easily use the fields you see here to filter down information and really narrow in and focus on what you're trying to look for there. So from the conditions page, the next one we're going to take a quick look at is our actions page. So the conditions are, again, those high-level things. Now the actions are everything you need to accomplish to satisfy the condition. Now I'm set up as an admin in this CATS application, so I can see actions assigned to everyone, but your users will have this list pre-filtered to actions that are assigned to them, meaning this actions tab becomes very important. It becomes their to-do list. So it's a single place they can go to see every outstanding action they have that they need to complete, and it's all organized for them. So a very powerful thing to be able to use for daily work. Again, the Actions tab is very customizable, just like everything else, but the way we have this one set up, running left to right, you have that condition ID, the category, and the title for the condition. That's just to help you understand what that action is related to. Then you have some action information. You have the ID, unique ID for each action, a title. You can again add those to a group, but in actions, those get assigned to a specific individual. It's very important, in our opinion, for actions to be assigned to a specific individual. That way it's very, very clear who has the action to complete that. There's not a multiple people assigned and I thought they were doing it and they thought they were doing it. It's a single person assigned to action. So you have that ability here as well. Then of course the status and that due date. Now with these, the condition IDs and the action IDs are hyperlinked. So that actually, when we click on those, is going to take us into another page. Now you'll notice on actions before we do that, again, you have the ability to do those same filters like we looked at on our condition screen. So again, you can get a nice running list of actions and apply some filters to help you narrow down the information. Now, the other piece that we're not going to dive into in this high level is what we call data grid view on the actions. So you've heard us mention that our team uses CATS to manage our internal processes, and we are geographically dispersed. So having a Zoom meeting where we can pull up our CATS application and quickly review action items and update them as a team is very, very important. We didn't want to, note an action, write down the changes, go back into the platform and update it. That became very burdensome and time consuming. So we built a data grid view into the application, which means with a couple of clicks, we can very easily update our actions. So a very cool feature to save time in updating your actions. So let's actually go into an action here and take a look at some more of the information in the CATS application. So what we're looking at here is what I refer to as the condition summary screen. So now we've gone into a condition. We're looking at all the details over here on the left of the condition. Now with that, you can upload attachments, you can add comments. So for example, if you're working on, PRC 5, you can upload the PRC 5 standard into the condition. So it's there for easy reference for anybody that wants to look at it. Now over here on the right is, again, all those actions we need to satisfy to complete the condition. Now, when I click on this little eyeball on the left, it brings out all of the action information. So for this one specifically, you can see the status, the individual that it's not currently assigned to. You've got the group, who identified it, the title, description. So it's just some brief information about that action and when it's coming due, and all of those items are here as well in this little red bar. You can see this one's quite overdue. So in here in the actions, you do have some functionality to set them as recurring. Again, Ted mentioned that earlier, how valuable the ability is to set actions to recurring. Think like your Outlook calendar, recurring things that happen when you make appointments. Similar in here, but the recurring and the functionality really, really works with how NERC sets deadlines for those standards. So we've got some really neat recurring functionality built in. We also have the ability to clone actions. So if you have multiple different registered entities and they all need the same action, you can very quickly clone across the platform to not have to redo a bunch of actions. It just makes it a lot quicker to disseminate that information multiple times. Now with actions, you can also add attachments. This becomes really important when you want to provide your evidence or any kind of documentation necessary to close out that action. This is where you can provide that information. It can be a PowerPoint, a PDF, a Word file, all kinds of different file types, but a great, great place to put that closure documentation with the action items. And then finally, you have a running comment log. So you can provide comments to your supervisor. You can put comments out there for yourself to help you remember, but it's just a general comment section. It date timestamps the comments, so you just have a running dialogue on each of the actions to help you maintain the status there. So with that, let's jump into the next piece. I'm going to skip the next 2 tabs here. Unassigned conditions and actions, that's administrative functionality, and in a high-level demonstration, we're gonna pass over those. So we're gonna take a quick look at reports. So reports in the system, we have some canned reports, meaning reports that we've predetermined to be really good ones that lots of people like to run. So they're very, very quick and easy to run. So those are over on the left-hand side of your screen. Now you can run all of our reports in CATS at either the condition level or the action level. So personally, I tend to run mine at the action level. Now, why do I do that? So when I run a condition report, I'm only going to get returned condition information. When I run an action level report, I get both condition and action level information. And well, I like to have all the information. So I run the action reports, but both options are there for whatever you like to do. So within the action reports, you can see we have due in 7 days, we have overdue as some canned options. And then over here on the right-hand side, you can run custom reports, meaning you can pick and choose what you'd like to run your report on and then run that report. I personally have several reports that I look at for us here at Certrec. Now, one thing we built into the system, once you run a report, you can create a subscription for yourself. So for example, I like due in 7 days. So I ran that report, created a subscription for myself. So every Monday morning, I get an email with what's coming due in 7 days. So I've set up that recurring email for due in 7 days and overdue. So I don't have to come to the platform to get that information. It's delivered to me in my inbox, and I can just keep going from there. So a lot of report functionality in the platform, and then the nice subscription piece where information's delivered out to you. So with that, the last piece we have here is we've mentioned several times, CATS is a low no-code solution. So we do have a lot of administrative functionality built into the platform. Should you want to manage and make changes and customize and all of those fun things, you do have the ability to do that. Again, we're not going to go into that here, but understand, Certrec brings a lot to the CATS application with it. So you're not just starting with an empty slate, an empty platform. We're going to bring our expertise. We will help you in setting it up. And of course, we want to make it work for you. So that's a quick high-level demonstration of CATS. We look forward to showing you more in the future. Hey everyone, welcome to our live Q&A session. As a reminder, please feel free to submit questions at any point during our Q&A session. So as you may know by now, CATS can be used for many different compliance applications, as in a corrective action program, commitment tracking, or general business action tracking. But with me today is Evans Heacock, our ONC Office of NERC Compliance Director. We'll be focusing on NERC challenges and how CATS has helped his team save time, manage risk, and maintain NERC compliance successfully. Welcome, Evans.
Thank you. Nice to be here again today.
Yes, I have to say it was really difficult for me to only talk about CATS for a few minutes. I feel like I could talk about that forever. I tried to keep it short. So just a couple questions to start us out. So, as we've mentioned throughout this, your team uses CATS to support a number of different registered entities all across the United States and Canada. How would you say having CATS has changed your team's processes and allowed them to be successful in doing that?
Well, the biggest one is, like you said, we are helping folks across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. And that helps us bridge that gap. We have dispersed folks out there. Our clients are dispersed. Actually, some of our folks are dispersed. So it helps bring them all together in one spot to work in one repository. So CATS really helps us organize in that regard and let us follow through and make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, like our folks or their folks, making sure they're accountable. Because once you put it in, it'll track. And then you can look at making sure your team, whoever's team it might be, is following and making sure they're staying up where they're supposed to be and making sure their plants are staying compliant or their transmission systems, wherever it might be. So it's really helped out in that regard. It helps with communications tremendously also, from standpoint of that it gives you a point to talk from. So looking at actions that are coming due gives you an ability to sit down, look at it, go over those actions coming up, and talk about those and make sure that everything is going through and being completed the way it needs to be done.
So you mentioned accountability. How would you say, CATS really helps specifically with accountability? Is it, supervisor access to the information? Is it team access? What would you say really helps with accountability?
All those things that you mentioned, of course. So the supervisor gets to make sure that his workers are doing what they need to be doing, his or hers, and then also following up and making sure that the person, the compliance person, is following up and making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be. So that action will come to that person, and it'll come. You can get them out as a list, and it'll list out all those actions, and they will go through and make sure that they're staying up to date. And then the supervision and then management can follow on too to make sure everything's being completed. And by looking at forward, it's forward looking, and also to some degree reverse looking. So if you miss something, it'll show up as overdue, and it'll show up. You can do a 1 day ahead look, you can do a 1 week look, 1 month, 1 year, however you want to do it.
So would you say that's some of the insights, a registered entity might gain from CATS is the ability to look ahead at all that information?
Yes, that's definitely a plus, is to have those insights. So what kind of manpower load you might need. You might need to know how you're going to schedule services for coming out and doing testing at the various sites. If you need to schedule for that ahead of time, a couple of months out, what it is, or a year out, you can look at it ahead of time and determine what you need.
So how far out would you say that you schedule when you're using CATS for registered entity? How far out do we typically schedule?
We go way out, actually, for all of our clients. We schedule way out in advance so that we can make sure we are tracking all those items well in advance. So you can do 5 years, 12 years, 20 years, 50 years, whatever you need to make sure you're following through. Again, we do a lot of multiple year items out there, especially if you get into a 5 year. We'll do a 5 year, 10 year, 15 year type item, put them all in there so that we are making sure we are staying compliant, and those will show up as need be.
So that's a good bit of work, I assume, preloading 5 years of information. So what's the real benefit of having that extra information in there when we're looking ahead? So
when you say it is a lot of work, can be, but we actually also have some tools that we can do to help us preload that information. We have some folks in our group, some smart programmers that we say we need you to do this for us, and they can load it simply and quickly for us, so we don't spend all that time. But the bottom line is, we have that data there, and you can use it as a entity to ensure you're staying up in time and with all your compliance and forecasting.
So is there anything that, comes out of the system to help people understand, where they don't have to go and look on a missed deadline or upcoming, does the system send automatic email notifications?
Yes, it does. Nice prompt for that one.
Yes.
So we can do is you set up a recurring email to make sure that you're asking for the information to come out, and that will do that daily. It can be daily. It can be weekly. It can be monthly. Most folks are going to be wanting a daily type report just to make sure they're staying ahead. It'll show upcoming events to whatever you want to request it to be. Again, it can be 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, and all those information. So some of it can be overload, so you might want to be careful about how you select it. And you can have several reports. You don't have to have just the one. You can have several reports that come to you for that weekly, weekly look ahead, that 2 week look ahead, and then have a separate one for a 1 year look ahead. So if you're wanting to do planning for budgetary items the next year.
That's a really interesting one, a year in advance planning for budgetary items. How does that work?
So there'd be, again, once you put it in, you're saying my items following all the NERC standards. If it's coming up in the next year, when you're actually going to a budget cycles, you would want to go look at those items and see what items I have, like a Mod 25 that takes some extra resources to get out there, a little extra cost, a Mod 26, PRC 19. All those are little extra expenses that you're going to need to plan for. So knowing about those ahead of time allows you to put that in your budget cycle so you don't miss it, and then you're not scrambling trying to find those funds when you're into that current cycle.
Interesting. That's a nice insight there. Okay, we've had a couple of good questions come from the audience, so let's start with a few of these. So we talked about earlier that CATS can store a lot of evidence or documentation in each of the actions and conditions. The question is it secure enough for me to put NERC compliance evidence into?
Yes, our CATS system and Certrec is a ISO 27001 certified company, along with SOC 2 Type 2. We have a yearly examination that we make sure that we're following processes, that we encrypt all of our information. It's actually at rest and in transit. All of our information is encrypted so that it can be broken into, and taken out of by cybersecurity bullies, as it were. We have all that in secure servers. Our servers are secured, so it is very well protected.
And we currently host quite a bit of evidence.
Yes, we do.
In CATS.
Yeah, we have of all of our clients, over 100 sites. We have most all their information in CATS stored in there, without any problem. And again, that makes it easy to retrieve also.
Right. Excellent. Okay, so let's see. We've got a couple other questions. How long does it take to get this up and running should somebody decide to go with CATS?
So it will vary on what you're looking for.
So it depends.
It depends. That's always the case.
Yes.
It actually can be very quick, from a day to several weeks to a little bit longer, just depending on how you want your CATS to look, what functionality you want in it, and how many sites. And one of the nice things is, again, we can build in a lot of that up front. If you have multiple sites that you're trying to track actions with, we can put all that in up front and preload that based on your needs or based on something that we have done in the past, and we can help you get that information, how it needs to be built, and then we can build all those and put it into for all your sites fairly quickly. So 2 weeks maybe, just depending on the going back and forth and determining what the client needs specifically.
Now, so could we potentially import, if they have existing information, say they're using a spreadsheet to track actions right now. So they're not starting from a blank piece of paper. Could that be imported or something along those lines?
Yes, we can definitely import whatever you might have on a spreadsheet and bring that in very easily. Any documentation that goes with it, we can actually put it in and then store it with those particular actions. One of the things that we found is that it is best to store that information with those particular actions, because you can go in and do some searches for that and find that evidence fairly quickly that way.
So, as we've mentioned several times, your team obviously uses CATS regularly to manage lots of different registered entities. So, one of the values we bring with CATS is expertise to help set it up according to what we know. So what would you say are some of the key things we figured out in how to set up CATS successfully?
So what we probably found is breaking up those items that need reoccurring actions primarily. PRC5 has its own usually little setup with a action within it, and because that's very reoccurring, every 4 months to yearly to 18 months and longer. So that's actually one that we have built that is set up to recur by itself, just PRC5. And then we have FAC8s, and then we have training items in there also. So we break it down a lot of times by what the standard requires. And some of them we group together, like maybe a VAR 2. You can have, depending on your site, you can have a lot of communications with a transmission company, say if you're a power plant, and you need to receive that and store it. So it really ends up varying, but the big ones we separate out are going to be PRC5, FAC8, some of the comms, but some of them we put together as general type. We call it kind of a general information. So
a lot of time has been spent to try a few different things, and then now you have it organized, I guess how you would say it's successful to manage compliance.
Correct. For what works for us. Now, not everything works equally across the board, and everybody has, of course, their own ideas, and we can set it up. But yes, we have spent the last 10 years, as we said, reworking CATS and how it needs to be organized that works for us, and making sure we have the right flow and the information stored the right way. That's understandable.
Right. That's the key.
Yes.
Understandable and retrievable. So another question we have out here, is there an on-premise solution? SIP compliance may have BES cyber system information as evidence.
That's a good, interesting question, mainly because of what's there. Because of some of the requirements out there, you cannot necessarily store all that information on somebody else's servers, right, especially cloud-based. And one of the things that we are not cloud-based. So you do have to be very cautious about how that information is stored. And we will do links and point to information as necessary. Some of it that we feel like is not necessarily truly, cyber issues where you have to worry about storage, we can put it on there. But we will look at that and making sure we get the right information on ours or point to where it needs to be.
Where it's actually stored.
Yeah.
Excellent. So another question, there are a lot of these types of programs out there. Why would you say that somebody should go with CATS over a different solution?
Well, it's basically needs these days. With what we talked about already, we're kind of dispersed throughout the U.S. A lot of folks are working from home, not only because of the pandemic issues, but also that's kind of the way things are going. So you have a large geographic area with employees. So any of those then can get to it, a web-based site, like we have, from anywhere, anytime. The availability of CATS is up around 5 nines. We try to especially maintain 5 nines availability all the time. So a very, very low loss of time that you could not get to it. So that's the big advantage, probably the biggest advantage, is having it available all the time and people can get to it from wherever.
So could CATS be tied together with, say they're using Maximo or some other, enterprise type Oracle, SAP, whichever one we want to talk about. Mm-hmm. Can CATS be tied into those systems?
Yes, we can do some background programming. We could actually sit down and look at the interfaces and then make sure we have some calls that will talk to one computer system to the other, basically download that information, and then we can actually tell it where it needs to go from Maximo to store those informations, piece parts. Actually work with workflows too, to some degree. So if you have a workflow, we can make sure we get that integrated in properly.
Excellent. So one of the big things we talk about a lot for our clients and that they're talking about out there is risk mitigation. How would you say CATS helps registered entities mitigate risks?
So CATS helps by making sure that you are following and staying up to speed and on time with all your NERC requirements. Again, since it is tracking those due dates, it's action tracking, it's going to say, okay, I'm coming up. So if you're following that, it's going to lower your risk for missing any kind of actions. Is the world perfect all the time? No. Sometimes they may go past, but CATS will also help you say, okay, yeah, you may have missed this, and it will bring your attention to it by saying, yeah, you've missed this, and then you can take the appropriate steps to make sure you get back in compliance. So it's helping, make sure you maintain your risk by making sure you are staying current with your actions.
Therefore not getting violations.
Yes, that's right. Bottom line is try not to get any violations.
That's right. Okay, so excellent. So we've had another question come in. We're back on premise. Is there an ability to back up the information on premise?
So I'm going to have you help me out with that one,
okay.
I think.
So the answer is, this is from Ronald. So Ronald, the answer is yes. We've done that with some other clients where we've given a regular export out of the system to go into your records management or your storage, however you're needing to store it. If we needed to do a regular, API exchange or something like that, we could certainly work with you to make sure it's stored on premise as well as through our solution. Great question. So back on mitigating the risk and talking about violations, we've got a ton of information in CATS. Mm-hmm. How would you say your team really limits down to focus on what matters right now in CATS?
Well, it gets down to the standard and what the main requirements of the standard are. What we end up trying to do with all of our information is make sure we get the pertinent information that goes with that particular standard and put that data in to CATS as the evidence. And that can actually be multiple items. It can be a document that we get from a vendor saying, they did battery tests. It can be a report, doing a PRC 19. It can also be emails. You put your emails in there also so that you have all that. But trying to make sure that you're getting the right information is really going to be somewhat of a filter by the person and then putting that in. So still the human element to part of this, but making sure they get in. You can still get information overload, so you do have to be cautious about what you put in and think through it a little bit. You don't want to dump everything in there. But the bigger part of it is that you'll have it all in the end. Even if you do get carried away, you'll have it all, and you can do a search through it and see what the information is.
And having it all, everything historical's in there as well, right?
That's correct.
So you have the ability to go back and look and see what you've done in the past.
Correct, for years, for months, weeks, months, years. So
Excellent.
you can go way back as long as you had that information, in CATS. Like we talked about, even if we brought in some past information, if you got it new, you could actually take that past information, put it in there and store it. So it doesn't have to be from the day you got it. We can load it in and go backwards.
Excellent. So is there anything else you'd like to share with CATS and some of the benefits your team has felt since they started using that program?
Well, we've kind of said it all. Ted said part of that. It's web-based. It makes it easy to work from just about any location. It helps with communications. It helps with accountability. And it makes sure you stay compliant. The bottom line is, are you compliant? And it helps make sure you're following those dates. We have a lot of features we built in, recurring actions, as it were, or cloning actions. Probably one of the easiest things we've found also is that if you have multiple sites, you don't have to put it in for each site. We can actually do a upload to all sites at one time for that one particular item. So if you get a new standard, you don't have to type it into each site. We can actually do all that for you and get it ready for you.
And you can manage multiple plants in one CATS application.
Yep.
Say you have a fleet of 10 assets.
Correct. That's
right.
Correct. Yeah, we actually have that. We do have several sites, several clients that have multiple sites, and we do it under one application for that site, for that company.
Do you adjust CATS implementations based off of generation type?
No, we do not. It's basically all the same because the NERC standards apply across the board.
Right.
So really, it may be the type of information comes in may be a little different, but they still have to meet the generic requirements. So they're across the board, they're the same as far as NERC cares.
So we have another question from Ronald. Have we supported clients' audits?
Yes, we have. We continuously help client audits, and we can do a pre-audit review or during the audit, or we are back end also. But we have typically all of our clients. When they go into an audit, we help them out, make sure that we're there to answer questions. We put together the RSOLs. Any request for more information, we help with that. We can do it for guided self-certs. We can do it spot checks. We can do it for regular audits. So we help all of our clients with audits.
And for our regular ongoing clients that we manage year-round, we keep them in an audit-ready state?
That's correct, yes. Yeah. We can make sure that their data is up to date, again, using CATS, and then dealing with RSOLs. We keep our RSOLs up to date.
Excellent. Great question, Ronald. Thank you for sharing that. So, with CATS, again, we've used it for business applications, for corrective action programs, for NERC. So, it's a great action tracking system. And, you've been in the nuclear industry. You've used a nuclear corrective action program. How would you compare this CATS to that more complex system?
Well, I think you said it right there, the more complex. It's actually... it's a little more simplistic to a large degree. It's intuitive, and it flows very well. They still are surrounded around, the corrective action program, like a CR. You have a high-level condition, and then you can have actions underneath it. So it's still broken up somewhat the same way. The nice thing about ours is, since we do repetitive actions for the same thing over and over again, we can actually clone and cause have repeating actions in there to make sure we stay up with the PRC5s, especially the PRC5s. So it's to me, it's easier in a lot of ways. Everybody's made their CAP programs unique, I will say.
Yes.
This definitely does standardize it and makes it easier across a fleet. But I like it more than I have with the other ones. I won't say anything more than that part of it. But
Excellent. Well, I enjoy CATS as well. It's a good program.
Yep.
So, Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for today. We want to thank you so much for joining us for this conversation with Certrec, where we discuss CATS and how it can help you to never miss another NERC deadline. Now, if you'd like to discuss CATS in greater detail, please feel free to contact us at any point at 817-738-7661 or send us an email at support@certrec.com. We hope you'll join us for the next conversation with Certrec, and until then, have a great day.